Step out of the car right now, or I swear I'll drag you out myself. Officer Karen Mitchell's voice split the night air like glass shattering. Her hand hovered near the holster, eyes locked on the black man behind the wheel, a man who, unknown to her, had put hundreds of corrupt officials behind bars. You just made the biggest mistake of your life, Officer Mitchell, he said quietly, his tone steady but edged with warning. And soon, the whole world will see what kind of predator hides behind that badge. Before the story starts. Where are you watching from? Hit subscribe and like. What happens next will make you question justice in America. It was 9:15 p.m. on Peachtree Street, Atlanta, a stretch of neon lights and restless traffic. Jamal Edwards, 45 years old, drove home after lecturing at Morehouse College about corruption and integrity in law enforcement. He wasn't just any lecturer. For 20 years, he had served as one of the FBI's top agents in public corruption, known for exposing dirty cops and political fraud across 5 states. But retirement hadn't shielded him from what was coming. For months, he had noticed the same patrol car tailing him at odd hours, always Unit 4721, always with that same driver, Officer Karen Mitchell, 3 times in 8 months. She had stopped him, each time claiming a minor violation, each time letting him go when she realized his record was spotless. But this time, her tone was different. This time, something darker pulsed beneath her words. Mitchell stepped out of her cruiser, boots crunching on the asphalt, one hand resting on her gun. Her mind raced back to 8 years earlier, to the night she had been shot by a young black suspect during a drug raid gone wrong. The bullet tore through her shoulder, nearly ending her career. Since then, fear had fermented into something else. Every face that looked like his became a threat. And Jamal Edwards, confident, calm, successful, he embodied everything she both feared and resented. "License and registration," she barked, though the lights on her dash cam weren't recording. "Sure," Jamal replied evenly, hands visible, movements measured. He handed over his ID with the calm precision of a man who had rehearsed this moment his whole life. "May I ask what I've done wrong?" he said. "You were swerving." She lied. "That's impossible," he said. "The cameras will prove it." In that instant, Jamal reached into his jacket, not for a weapon, but for something far more dangerous to a corrupt cop: truth. Hidden beneath the lapel was a small microphone linked to a secure cloud database approved by the FBI. As soon as he pressed record, a light blinked once, and his voice came through. March 5th, 9:15 p.m., Peachtree Street. Officer Karen Mitchell, 3rd stop in 8 months. Pattern confirmed. Then, almost silently, he tapped his phone's side button twice, a coded signal to his old FBI partner, Assistant U.S. Attorney Victor Chen. Within minutes, Chen's cyber team would be hacking into Atlanta's traffic cameras, pulling live feeds, syncing GPS coordinates. It wasn't just a stop anymore. It was evidence. "Step out," Mitchell snapped. "You smell like alcohol." Jamal blinked. "I don't drink." "Officer." "Then you won't mind a test," she said, yanking the door open. The cuffs clicked around his wrists before he could respond. "You're under arrest for resisting and assaulting an officer." "Assault?" he said, incredulous. "You haven't even explained the stop." "You moved too fast," she said, voice trembling slightly. "I thought you were reaching for my wallet," he said bitterly. "You're making a mistake." "Officer." "We'll see about that," she murmured, pushing him into the back seat. From her patrol radio came a distorted male voice. "Unit 4721. Package secure?" She glanced around before answering softly. "Affirmative?" "Good." The voice replied, "Drop him. He talks too much about corruption." She froze for a second. Guilt flickered, but it vanished beneath the old armor of justification. "He's dangerous," she told herself. "I'm doing what's right." But deep down, she knew she was lying. To the system, to her badge, to herself, at the station. Jamal sat behind the steel bars of holding cell 3, his wrists still sore from the cuffs. He knew better than to shout or plead. That's what they wanted. For him to react, to fit the story they'd already written. Instead, he stared at the ceiling, voice low. You picked the wrong man, Mitchell, and when this is over, the truth will bury you in Washington. Victor Chen's phone lit up with an encrypted alert, recording received. The message read, traffic cam feed intact. Within minutes, the video clearly showed Jamal's car driving perfectly straight, obeying every signal. It was enough to destroy the lie. But first, it had to reach the courtroom. Back at home, Lisa Edwards, Jamal's wife, was grading papers when her phone rang. Mrs. Edwards? Your husband's been arrested for DUI and resisting. She froze. That's impossible, she whispered. He doesn't even drink. The officer on the other end hung up before she could ask more. Fear crept into her chest. The same fear she'd seen in Jamal's eyes when he talked about his father. His father, a black officer in Atlanta, had been killed 35 years earlier by his own colleagues during a resisting arrest altercation. The department Jamal sat in silence for hours, recalling the oath he'd once taken, to protect the Constitution, to serve without bias or fear. Yet here he was, a victim of the very system he once defended. You can break bones, he thought, but you can't break truth. His phone, confiscated but still transmitting, sent live audio to the FBI database. Every word, every threat, every false report she filed, outside. Rain began to fall, tapping against the barred window like a quiet warning. At 2 a.m., Mitchell filed her report. Subject swerved, resisted, attempted to grab weapon. She hesitated before signing. Her conscience whispered, "You know it's false," but another voice, the darker one, replied, "You can't turn back now." She signed anyway, across town. Victor Chen reviewed the footage, shaking his head. "They're still doing this," he muttered. "After everything we fought for." He hit send. The evidence began its digital journey, to the courthouse, to the press, to history. Meanwhile, Jamal closed his eyes, breathing slowly. "They think I'm just another black man on the street," he whispered. "But I've seen monsters like them before. And this time, I'm ready." The light from a flickering bulb cast long shadows across his face, but his eyes were steady, unbroken. Tomorrow, the world would begin to see what Atlanta's finest had tried to hide. And somewhere down the hall, Officer Mitchell poured herself a cup of coffee, hands trembling. She didn't know it yet, but every word she'd spoken was already on record. The storm she'd unleashed was coming for her, and there was no place left to hide. The truth is, whatever the jury believes, Agent Edwards, whispered District Attorney Robert Klein before stepping past him into the courtroom. And today, they'll believe Officer Mitchell. His voice was calm, but Jamal caught the smirk, the kind he'd seen on dozens of corrupt officials he'd once investigated. It was March 20th. Morning light streaming through the tall arched windows of Fulton County Courthouse. The crowd was thick, buzzing with tension. Dozens of cameras lined the hallway, and the smell of fresh coffee mixed with the charged air of a city on edge. For Atlanta's black community, this wasn't just another case, it was a test of whether justice could still mean anything. Before the hearing began, Judge Elena Vargas entered, her robe flowing, silver hair tied neatly behind her head. "This court will come to order," she announced, voice steady and sharp. "The state of Georgia versus Jamal Edwards." Reporters leaned forward, pens ready. Jamal sat beside his attorney, Alex Rivera, a young Latino lawyer with fierce eyes and nervous hands. Alex had never defended a case this big, But he'd promised Jamal one thing. He would fight it as if it were his own life on the line. Officer Karen Mitchell sat across the room, uniform crisp, posture perfect. Her eyes darted toward Jamal, and for a brief second, they met. She looked away first. Behind that badge was a storm of guilt and defiance. She had convinced herself the ends justified the means, that by targeting men like him, she was preventing another ambush, another bullet in her shoulder. She didn't see bias. She saw survival. But deep down, she knew she was crossing lines she could never uncross. The prosecution began. Klein rose with performative authority. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury," he said, pacing slowly. On the evening of March 5th, Officer Mitchell, a decorated 12-year veteran, stopped the defendant for erratic driving. Instead of cooperating, he became aggressive, refused testing, and attempted to seize her weapon. A collective murmur swept the room. He gestured toward her. "She'll tell you herself what happened that night." Mitchell took the stand. Her voice was calm, almost mechanical at first. He swerved across 2 lanes. "When I approached, I smelled alcohol. I asked him to step out. He refused. When I opened the door, he lunged." She paused, taking a practiced breath. "I feared for my life." Gasps rippled through the audience. Sophia Lee, a young Korean-American reporter in the press section, scribbled notes rapidly, glancing toward Jamal with a look that said she wasn't buying it. "And what did you do next?" Klein asked. "I subdued him," Mitchell replied. "For my safety, and for public safety." Alex Rivera stood, buttoning his suit jacket. "Officer Mitchell, you're certain you smelled alcohol?" "Yes." "You conducted a breathalyzer?" "No." He refused. "Do you have that refusal recorded?" "No." "The body cam malfunctioned." Alex raised an eyebrow. "Malfunctioned," he repeated slowly. "Isn't it true that your body cam malfunctioned on 3 previous arrests involving black males accused of resisting?" "Objection!" Klein barked. "Irrelevant and inflammatory." Judge Vargas eyed him coolly. "Overruled. Continue. Mr. Rivera." Mitchell hesitated. "Yes," she admitted, "but that's coincidence." "Coincidence," Alex echoed. "And yet in each case, you filed the same 3 charges, DUI, resisting, and assault on an officer. That's standard protocol," she said quickly. "When the suspect, the accused," Alex interrupted, "wasn't violent at all." "You weren't there," she shot back. "But you were," he replied, stepping closer. "And you turned off the camera." She stiffened, lips tightening. The jury exchanged uneasy glances. Jamal watched quietly, his eyes calm but focused. He'd spent 2 decades reading people, knowing when the truth cracked through the mask. Mitchell's hands were trembling slightly, something only a trained eye could catch. Then came a whisper of tension. Mitchell's phone, hidden in her pocket, vibrated twice. She froze. A single text glowed on her screen, visible only for a heartbeat. "Keep your mouth shut, or you're next." Her throat went dry. She forced herself to continue, but her tone faltered. I feared for my life." Alex leaned closer, lowering his voice. "You feared him because he's black, didn't you?" The room fell into a hush. Klein jumped up. "Objection!" Vargas hesitated, then nodded. "Sustained." "Counsel, stay within professional bounds." "Yes." "Your Honor," Alex said, stepping back, though the damage was done. The question hung in the air like smoke. During recess, Jamal sat alone in the hallway, shackles now replaced by formality, a navy blazer covering his calm frame. Lisa, his wife, slipped through the crowd to sit beside him. Her eyes were swollen from sleepless nights. "They're trying to destroy you," she whispered. "I know," he said. "But they've already lost." She frowned. "How?" He looked at her gently. "Because the truth doesn't die. It waits. Inside." Sophia Lee approached Alex, showing her phone. Traffic cam footage from March 5th. It's been scrubbed from the city archive. Deleted? He asked. Or hidden? She nodded. Someone high up doesn't want this seen. Alex's jaw tightened. Get me what you can. We'll subpoena the rest. The afternoon resumed, and Jamal finally took the stand. Klein smirked as if confident in his control. Mr. Edwards, you're a former FBI agent, correct? Yes. Retired. Not dismissed? Retired with honor. Then you must understand how traffic stops work. I understand procedure, Jamal said, and I understand abuse of power. Murmurs rose again. Klein paced. You claim innocence, yet Officer Mitchell's statement is detailed, consistent, and sworn. Consistency doesn't make truth. Jamal replied, Lies are consistent. 2. Judge Vargas tapped her pen but said nothing. She'd seen hundreds of cases like this, none with this much attention. Something about this one felt different, heavier, as though history itself were watching. The defense ended for the day, and as the crowd filtered out, Mitchell found herself standing alone in the hallway, her reflection staring back from the courthouse window. For the first time, doubt crept in. She thought about her son, 13 years old, who'd once said, Mom, why do you always stop black people? She'd laughed it off then. Now. His words echoed louder than the reporters outside. Meanwhile, across town, Victor Chen's team finished syncing the encrypted footage Jamal had triggered that night. The cameras had recorded everything, his steady driving, the unprovoked stop, the illegal arrest. Within hours, the file would reach Rivera's inbox. The truth was about to surface, and once it did, no one, not Klein, not Mitchell, not the Atlanta Police Department, would walk away clean. That night, as Jamal and Lisa returned home under quiet protection, she asked, Do you ever regret not staying in the bureau? He smiled faintly. No, the badge gave me power. But this fight, this gives me purpose. Somewhere in the dark. Mitchell sat in her car, staring at her trembling hands. Another message appeared. You talk. You die. She deleted it, heart pounding. She thought she was the predator. But now, for the first time, she realized she was just another pawn in a far bigger hunt. And as the courthouse lights dimmed, Atlanta held its breath. The next hearing would either destroy a man's life or expose a city's soul. The thing about lies. Alex Rivera began softly, pacing before the witness stand, is that they never collapse all at once. They crumble, one nervous blink at a time. His tone was calm, deliberate, and in that still courtroom, every juror was hanging on his words. Officer Karen Mitchell sat rigid in the witness chair, jaw tight, eyes darting briefly toward the prosecution table where District Attorney Klein sat, pretending to review his notes. But she could feel the sweat on her palms, the way her pulse thudded beneath the polished fabric of her uniform. The text message from the night before still echoed in her mind. Keep quiet, or you'll end up like Rodriguez. She knew exactly what that meant. Detective Rodriguez, the one who'd tried to blow the whistle on the APD drug network, had been found accidentally shot during a traffic stop. She took a shaky breath as Alex's voice sliced through her thoughts. You've had a long career. Officer Mitchell, he said. 12 years, correct? Yes, she replied stiffly. In those 12 years, how many arrests have you made involving so-called assaults on officers? About 25, she said. Rehearsed, and of those, how many involved black males? Silence. Her fingers clenched around the wooden railing. I don't have that statistic, she said. I can refresh your memory. Alex continued, flipping through a folder. According to APD records, 22 of the 25 were black men. Does that sound about right? Those are just the cases I handled, she stammered. Coincidence? Objection. Klein shouted. "Counsel is implying racial bias without foundation." Judge Vargas's eyes were cool, unreadable, overruled. She said evenly, "The witness will answer." Mitchell swallowed. "Maybe," she whispered. "Maybe coincidence, or maybe pattern." Alex pressed. "A pattern of targeting men who remind you of the suspect who shot you 8 years ago." Her head snapped up. "That has nothing to do with this, doesn't it?" he said quietly, stepping closer. "Your trauma turned into bias, and your bias turned into abuse." Klein slammed his notebook shut. "Your Honor, sit down. Mr. Klein," Judge Vargas ordered. The courtroom murmured, "Sophia Lee," in the front press row, typed furiously, every word echoing in her recorder. She could feel it. The story was changing shape before her eyes. Alex turned back to the witness. "Tell us about your body cam that night." "It malfunctioned," Mitchell replied. "It just happened to malfunction." "Yes. The same way it malfunctioned on June 3rd, August 21st, and October 12th. Her throat tightened. "Those were technical issues." "Technical," he repeated, "and each time. A black defendant claimed you used excessive force. Each time. Your report matched word for word. Subject resisted. Subject reached for weapon. Subject subdued." "I followed protocol," she snapped, voice cracking slightly. "Then why was your radio active during the arrest?" "What?" "Your cruiser's mic picked up a transmission at 9:17 p.m., Alex said. Holding up a transcript, you said, and I quote, "The network will like this one." Care to explain what network? The courtroom went silent. Mitchell's eyes widened. "I never said that," she whispered. "The recording says otherwise. It's fabricated. The timestamp matches your patrol car GPS, your radio ID, and your phone ping. Hard to fabricate all three." Klein rose again, sweating now. "This line of questioning is absurd. Counsel is making baseless claims about some criminal network." Alex turned slowly toward him. "Baseless?" He looked toward the bench. "Your Honor, we request the admission of supplemental evidence recovered by the Department of Justice Cyber Division, traffic camera footage, dashcam metadata, and encrypted recordings provided by my client, Special Agent Jamal Edwards." Gasps filled the room. Mitchell blinked. "Special Agent?" she whispered. Alex nodded slightly. "Yes, officer. The man you arrested isn't a random citizen. He's a decorated FBI agent who spent 2 decades exposing corruption inside police departments like yours." Judge Vargas's gavel slammed. "Order! This courtroom will maintain decorum." But she could see it now, panic rippling across the prosecution table, Klein's face draining of color, Mitchell's breathing turning shallow. Jamal sat still beside Alex, eyes steady, his calm demeanor radiating through the chaos. He had waited for this moment, the shift, the unraveling. Sophia's phone buzzed. It was a message from an anonymous source. "Check APD warehouse on Marietta Street. Files, drugs, names." She looked up sharply. If this case was what she thought it was, it reached far beyond one officer's bias. Alex continued, lowering his tone. "You accused my client of grabbing your weapon. Tell us, how did he do that?" "He reached," she said. "With his left hand?" "Yes." "You're certain?" "Positive." "So your report says he reached with his left hand for the gun on your right hip while you had his right arm pinned?" Mitchell blinked, confused. That's what happened." Alex leaned forward, voice slicing like a scalpel. "That's physically impossible." "Officer?" The jury stirred. Someone in the back gasped. Mitchell's voice trembled. He moved fast. "You lied," Alex said quietly. "And you know it." Her composure cracked. "You don't know what it's like," she blurted out. "Every night, wondering if the next stop will be your last. You don't know fear like that." Alex didn't flinch. "You're right," he said softly. "I don't know what it's like to carry a badge, but But I know what it's like to be targeted because of the color of your skin, and to be told fear justifies it." Silence fell again. Mitchell's eyes glistened, and for a fleeting second, guilt broke through the steel mask. Jamal watched quietly, heart heavy but resolute. He had seen monsters before, but rarely ones who looked this human. He leaned slightly toward Alex and whispered, "She's not the only one. There's someone pulling strings above her." Just then, the courtroom doors opened. Detective Tyrone Hayes entered, hesitant but determined. Judge Vargas frowned. "This court is in session." "Detective—" "I know, Your Honor," he said, voice trembling, "but I can't stay silent anymore." The gallery erupted. "Detective Hayes," Alex said, "you worked under Officer Mitchell's unit?" "Yes," he said, "and I saw her take orders from higher-ups to target specific people, mostly black professionals. They called it profiling for safety." But it wasn't safety. It was control. Mitchell's eyes filled with tears. "Tyrone." "Stop," she whispered. "They'll kill you." He ignored her. "They already tried," he said quietly. "Twice." Vargas looked from one to the other. "This court will recess immediately," she said, but the damage was done. The truth was spilling faster than anyone could contain it. As the gavel struck, Jamal turned to Alex. "Get Chen on the line," he said. "This goes higher than Atlanta PD, maybe even the DA's office." Alex nodded. "I believe you, but if we push this, you're not just clearing your name, you're declaring war." Jamal's eyes hardened. "Then it's about time someone did." Outside, as the crowd swarmed the courthouse steps, Sophia Lee looked up from her phone, whispering to herself, "This isn't just a case anymore. It's the beginning of a reckoning." And back inside, in the echoing silence of the empty courtroom, Officer Karen Mitchell sat alone, head bowed, trembling hands covering her face. Somewhere in her chest, buried under years of anger and fear, something cracked, the first sound of a conscience awakening. "Your Honor," Alex Rivera announced as the courtroom reconvened the next morning. "The defense calls Jamal Jonathan Edwards to the stand." The moment the name was spoken, whispers rippled through the packed gallery. Everyone knew this was no ordinary defendant, but what they didn't know, what no one expected, was who he really was. Jamal stood, buttoning his dark suit jacket, calm, controlled. Every eye followed him as he walked to the witness chair. The court officer raised a hand for the oath. "Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?" "I do," he said quietly. Alex stepped closer to the jury. "Mr. Edwards, for the record, could you tell the court your occupation?" "Retired," he said. "Retired from where?" "The Federal Bureau of Investigation." The words hit the room like a thunderclap. Gasps filled the air. Mitchell's head snapped up, color draining from her face. Klein froze, pen halfway to his notebook. Judge Vargas lifted her brow, eyes narrowing. "Excuse me. Mr. Edwards," she said. "Did you say FBI?" "Yes, ma'am. 20 years of service. Public Corruption Unit, Atlanta Division." The tension was suffocating. Sophia Lee's fingers flew across her keyboard, her live stream spiking to thousands of viewers within seconds. "Breaking," she whispered into her mic. "The man accused of assaulting an officer is a decorated FBI agent." Cameras clicked from every corner of the courtroom. Jamal's voice remained steady, almost too calm for what was unfolding. "On the night of March 5th, he said, I was driving home after a lecture at Morehouse College. I noticed Officer Mitchell's cruiser following me for several miles. This wasn't the first time. It was the third in less than a year." Alex paced slowly, nodding. "And what did you do when she stopped you?" "I complied." He said, "I rolled down my window, kept my hands visible, and asked for the reason for the stop. She told me I was swerving, which I was not. I activated a recording device approved for federal use. It documented everything. The big screen at the front of the courtroom flickered to life. "Permission to display Exhibit 17, Alex requested. "Granted," said Judge Vargas. The footage played, grainy but clear. The jury watched Jamal's car traveling straight down Peachtree Street, never crossing the lines. Then came the flashing lights, the stop, Mitchell's aggressive tone, her threats, her words. "You people think you can talk back." The crowd gasped audibly. Mitchell's face went pale. That's edited," she stammered. Alex didn't blink. "No, officer. It's time-stamped and authenticated by the DOJ's cyber forensic team." As the video played, Jamal's calm voice from the night echoed in the courtroom. "Jamal Edwards, 9:15 p.m., Peachtree near 10th, Unit 4721. Third stop in 8 months." Then the recording caught something chilling. Mitchell's own words whispered into her radio. "The network will like this one." The jury turned toward her. She tried to speak, but her lips trembled. Alex's tone softened, but his words cut like glass. "Officer Mitchell, you said under oath this stop was routine. What network were you referring to?" She shook her head. I don't know." "Let me help you," Alex said, clicking to another video. It showed security footage from an alley behind an APD substation. A familiar figure, Mitchell, exchanging a small envelope with a man known to investigators as Luis Ortega, a lieutenant in a cartel-linked smuggling ring. The room erupted. Mitchell shot to her feet. "That's not what it looks like," she cried. "Sit down, officer," Judge Vargas ordered sharply. Klein stood, voice trembling. "Your Honor, this is a distraction. These so-called videos are inadmissible." "Enough," Vargas interrupted. "Mr. Klein, you had your chance. Now sit." He obeyed, eyes darting nervously toward the back of the room where 2 federal agents had just entered quietly. Jamal looked at him, calm but firm. "You knew, didn't you?" he said. "You covered for them." Klein's throat worked, but no sound came. Then it happened. Mitchell's phone, buried in her pocket, buzzed again. She pulled it out instinctively. The screen showed one line: "Speak and you're dead." Her hands began to shake uncontrollably. She looked around the courtroom, suddenly aware of the eyes watching her. "Mr. Rivera," Judge Vargas said, "do you have more?" "Just one final piece," Alex replied. "A federal affidavit from Assistant U.S. Attorney Victor Chen, confirming that the FBI has been monitoring a smuggling operation inside the Atlanta Police Department for over 2 years. Officer Mitchell's patrol car and radio have been identified as communication nodes in that network." Mitchell gasped, her voice breaking. No, I didn't know they were using me." "Didn't you?" Alex asked softly. "Or did you just look away?" Her face crumpled. "They said it was intel work," she whispered. "They said we were keeping drugs off the street by planting them on innocent men." Jamal said quietly, "By framing people like me?" Her eyes filled with tears. "I didn't know it would go this far. It always goes this far." Jamal replied. The courtroom fell silent. Then, without warning, a loud crack echoed from outside, the unmistakable sound of a gunshot. Screams erupted as the bailiffs rushed to the windows. "Sniper!" someone shouted. "Get down!" Agents swarmed around Jamal and Alex, pulling them to the floor. Judge Vargas ducked behind the bench. The next seconds were chaos. Shouting, running, confusion. Jamal's heart pounded, but his training took over. He grabbed Alex and whispered, "They're trying to stop the testimony. It means we're close." When the room finally settled, news came in from the street. No one hit. The bullet had struck a light pole just outside the courthouse. A warning shot. Mitchell sat frozen, trembling. "They're serious. She whispered. "They'll kill me." Jamal looked at her, his voice steady. "Then tell the truth before they can." She stared at him for a long moment, then lowered her eyes. "You don't understand. This department, half of it's dirty. If I talk, it's over." "Then maybe," he said, "it's time for it to be over." Judge Vargas looked around the room, face pale but composed. "This trial is now under federal review," she declared, "effective immediately. All evidence and personnel are to be secured by the Department of Justice." Gasps filled the air. 2 U.S. Marshals stepped forward, collecting the recordings and escorting Mitchell out of the stand. She didn't resist. Her shoulders slumped, her head bowed, not like a criminal being led away, but like a soldier who finally understood the battle she'd been fighting was never hers to begin with. Outside, sirens wailed, media vans gathered, and the words "FBI agent framed by Atlanta police" flashed across every screen. Inside, Jamal sat back down, exhausted but calm. He glanced at Lisa in the audience. She was crying silently, but her tears weren't of fear anymore. They were of relief. For the first time in a year, someone had forced the system to look at itself, as the agents led him out under protective escort. He paused, turning toward Mitchell. "The truth doesn't destroy you, officer," he said quietly. "Lies do." She met his gaze through tear-streaked eyes. "I think I finally believe that." The heavy courthouse doors closed behind him, sealing the chaos inside. Outside, flashbulbs flared, reporters shouted questions, and Jamal simply raised a hand, not to silence them, but to promise them something bigger. "This isn't the end," he said firmly. "This is where accountability begins." When court resumed the next morning, the tension was thick enough to choke on. Word of the sniper attempt had spread nationwide. Reporters lined the courthouse steps, cameras flashing, microphones ready. Inside, every seat was filled. Community leaders, off-duty officers, even federal observers from Washington. Judge Elena Vargas entered, her face composed but her eyes hard. "This court is now under federal protection," she announced. "Anyone attempting interference will be held in contempt and prosecuted." Her gavel struck once, echoing like thunder. Officer Karen Mitchell sat at the defense table, not in uniform this time. She looked smaller now, stripped of the power the badge once gave her. Her attorney leaned close, whispering, "You don't have to do this." She shook her head. "Yes, I do." Across the aisle, Jamal sat beside Alex Rivera, his posture straight but calm. Lisa watched from the gallery, her hands clasped tightly, whispering prayers under her breath. The crowd hushed as Judge Vargas turned to the witness stand. "Officer Mitchell," she said, "you requested to make a voluntary statement. Proceed." Karen stood slowly, her voice trembling at first, then gaining weight. "For 12 years. I wore this badge believing I was one of the good ones," she began. "But somewhere along the way, fear took over, fear of the streets, fear of the unknown, fear of people who looked different from me." She paused, wiping her eyes. "The night I stopped Mr. Edwards, I knew he hadn't done anything wrong, but I told myself it didn't matter. I just wanted to feel safe. I wanted control. So I lied. I said he resisted. I said he reached for my gun. None of it was true." Gasps swept through the room. The stenographer's fingers froze mid-air. Klein jumped to his feet. "Your Honor, I object to this." "Sit down." "Mr. Klein," Vargas said coldly, "you've done enough." Karen continued. "There's more. For years, a group inside the Atlanta Police Department has been working with a smuggling network. They use arrests like mine to cover transport operations, drugs, money, sometimes even weapons. I followed orders. They told me who to pull over, when to turn off the cameras, what to write in the reports. If I refused, they threatened my family." She turned toward Jamal, voice cracking. "They told me you were one of them, a corrupt ex-agent selling evidence to the press. I believed them. I wanted to believe them. It was easier than facing the truth about myself. Judge Vargas leaned forward. Names. Officer. Karen's lips trembled. Deputy Chief Reynolds, Sergeant Moore, Lieutenant Collins, and... She hesitated, eyes flicking toward the prosecution table. District Attorney Robert Klein. The courtroom exploded in shouts. Order! Vargas barked, slamming the gavel. Marshal! Restrain Mr. Klein! 2 U.S. Marshals moved fast. Klein tried to protest. This is outrageous! She's lying! But the agents already had him by the arms. You can explain it to the Department of Justice, Vargas said icily. Karen's confession continued in sobs. They used me. They used all of us. I lost myself in their lies. And when Agent Edwards came along, I thought if I made him the villain, maybe I could still be the hero. She looked at Jamal. I'm sorry. You didn't deserve what I did. None of them did. He met her eyes with quiet gravity. The truth costs less than silence. Officer, he said softly, you did the right thing today. As her statement ended, the courtroom seemed to exhale. Reporters typed furiously. Sophia Lee's live stream had surpassed 100,000 viewers. Her voice shook as she narrated. In an unprecedented turn, Officer Karen Mitchell has confessed to falsifying charges and exposing a criminal network within APD and the District Attorney's Office. The headlines were already forming. Judge Vargas called for a recess. As the crowd spilled into the hallway, Victor Chen from the DOJ approached Jamal with a firm handshake. It's done, he said. We've issued warrants for 15 officers and 3 prosecutors. The network's finished. No, Jamal replied quietly. It's just beginning. Cleaning out a department is easy. Changing the culture. That takes time. Chen nodded, understanding. Meanwhile, in the holding room, Karen sat with her head in her hands as the marshals prepared to take her into custody. Will they protect my kids? She asked weakly. They'll be fine, one agent said. You did the right thing. She nodded, whispering. It doesn't feel like it. He paused at the door. It will. Outside. The media frenzy was electric. Protesters held signs reading, Justice for Jamal and Reform APD now. Lisa stepped into the sunlight beside her husband, tears streaming down her cheeks. It's over, she whispered. He shook his head gently. No. It's changing. There's a difference. They walked down the courthouse steps hand in hand as cameras followed, the crowd parting like a tide. That evening, the news spread across the nation. FBI agent framed by corrupt officers. Truth exposed in Atlanta courtroom. The story ignited outrage and hope in equal measure. Interviews flooded in. Networks demanded statements. And Jamal's calm face became the image of integrity under fire. But for him, it wasn't about fame. It was about closure. For his father. For every name buried under the phrase, resisting arrest. Later that night, Jamal sat in his living room, lights low, the city glowing outside. Lisa brought him tea and placed a hand on his shoulder. You did it, she said softly. You brought justice. He looked down at the worn badge on the table. His father's badge, the one he'd kept since childhood. Justice, he murmured, isn't a destination. It's a fight you keep showing up for, across the city, in a dim jail cell. Karen Mitchell lay on her cot staring at the ceiling. The adrenaline was gone. What remained was silence, heavy but strangely peaceful. She whispered to herself. I told the truth. Her lawyer said she'd likely face 5 years. She didn't care. For the first time in years, she could breathe. At dawn, Atlanta woke to sirens, not of corruption, but of raids. Officers in tactical gear executed simultaneous arrests across the city. One by one, the corrupt fell. Reynolds, Moore, Collins, Klein, all handcuffed under the same laws they had twisted. Cameras rolled as Chief Maria Gonzalez, now cooperating with the DOJ, stood before microphones. "We are ashamed, but we are not defeated," she said. "Today marks the start of rebuilding trust in this department." Back in his study, Jamal watched the press conference in silence when asked for comment. He finally spoke. "I don't celebrate someone's downfall. I celebrate accountability. That's what justice really means." As the sun rose over Peachtree Street, the same road where it all began, the city felt different, not healed, but healing, and for the first time in years, Jamal Edwards allowed himself a quiet smile. He had survived the lie. Now, the truth was doing what it was always meant to do: set everyone free. The next morning, the skyline of Atlanta glowed pale gold as the city awoke to the sound of helicopters and sirens. Not from fear this time, but from justice in motion. Federal agents in dark windbreakers spread across 15 precincts, executing warrants signed overnight by Judge Vargas and the Department of Justice. For the first time in decades, Atlanta Police Headquarters wasn't just a place of authority, it was a crime scene. Boxes of files were hauled out under flashing cameras, digital servers were seized, and officers once considered untouchable were led away in cuffs. Among them was Deputy Chief Reynolds, whose cold silence during his arrest said more than any denial ever could. On national television, the images played in a loop, proof that corruption had finally met its reckoning. And at the center of it all stood Jamal Edwards, the man they once tried to destroy. In a secure meeting room at the DOJ's Atlanta field office, Assistant U.S. Attorney Victor Chen led the morning briefing. On the wall, a large digital board displayed the investigation's progress. Operation Clean Shield. "We've confirmed 12 formal complaints suppressed by APD leadership," Chen said, scanning the room of agents and federal auditors, all connected to fabricated charges and falsified reports. The money trail leads directly to a cartel front in Texas and at least 2 political donors in Georgia. We'll be moving on them next. At the far end of the table, Jamal listened quietly, taking notes. He wasn't there as a victim anymore. He was an advisor. His experience with internal corruption made him indispensable. "We need transparency," Jamal said firmly. "The public must see reform, not just arrests. If we rebuild in secret, it'll look like cover-up, not change." Chen nodded. "You'll have full access." "Agent Edwards, you earned it." Later that week, Chief Maria Gonzalez addressed the public outside City Hall. Her face was tired but resolute. 15 officers and 3 prosecutors have been arrested. She announced, "We failed this city, but failure is only final if we refuse to change." Behind her, banners read, "Reform Atlanta, Restore Trust." Cameras flashed as she continued, effective immediately. All patrol units will use body cameras with live cloud backups monitored by independent oversight. Complaints will no longer disappear. The people deserve transparency. The crowd erupted in applause. At home that night, Jamal sat beside Lisa, watching the news. "They're finally doing it," she said softly. "It feels different this time." He nodded. "It's progress," he said, "but not victory. Corruption doesn't die. It adapts. We have to stay ahead of it." She smiled faintly. "Then keep fighting." "Jamal, the world needs your stubbornness." Within weeks, Atlanta began to change. Officers were retrained under federal supervision, community oversight boards were established in every district, and Jamal's civil case concluded with a $4 million settlement, not just for his wrongful arrest, but for systemic misconduct, instead of celebrating. He donated half to a foundation he created, the Edwards Justice Initiative. Its mission was simple: support victims of police abuse and fund reform programs nationwide. Lisa became its director, coordinating workshops, scholarships, and legal aid. If the system can be weaponized, she said at the launch event, then it can also be reformed by those who refuse to give up on it. Meanwhile, Karen Mitchell faced sentencing in court. She wore plain gray prison attire, her hair tied back neatly, when the judge offered her a chance to speak. She stood with steady composure. "I can't undo what I did," she said, "but I can spend the rest of my life trying to make it right." Her voice didn't shake this time. She was sentenced to 5 years, with eligibility for early release through participation in the DOJ's pilot rehabilitation program for law enforcement misconduct, an initiative Jamal himself had quietly advocated for. Accountability, he'd told Chen, must come with a path to redemption. Otherwise, we're just trading one injustice for another. Inside the federal complex, where she began her sentence, Mitchell spent her days tutoring other inmates and writing letters to the Edwards Initiative. In one of them, she wrote, "I finally understand that justice isn't about winning. It's about facing yourself and still choosing to do good." Jamal kept that letter on his desk. As months passed, the ripple effect spread. The FBI's findings led to state-level reforms across Georgia and inspired similar reviews in other cities. Within 6 months, 15 departments nationwide adopted the Atlanta model, a mandatory accountability framework requiring independent oversight, psychological evaluations for officers, and transparent disciplinary databases. News anchors called it a blueprint for 21st century policing. But even in the midst of triumph, Jamal couldn't forget the cost. Some nights he'd wake from dreams of his father, the officer killed decades earlier under similar lies. In those quiet hours, he'd sit by the window overlooking Peachtree Street, the same street where his ordeal began, and whisper, "We did it, Dad. We turned pain into purpose." By autumn, the city held a memorial for victims of wrongful arrests. Families gathered at Centennial Park as Jamal spoke beneath the warm evening light. "We can't rewrite the past," he said, his deep voice steady. "But we can make sure it never repeats. Justice isn't revenge, it's repair. And repair starts with honesty." The crowd rose to its feet in applause, many in tears. Among them was Detective Tyrone Hayes, now promoted to deputy chief. He saluted Jamal from the front row, a quiet acknowledgement of the courage it took to stand against the system. At the federal level, Chen's career soared. He was appointed director of the DOJ Reform Task Force, tasked with replicating the Atlanta success nationwide. Without Edwards, he told reporters, none of this would have happened. He reminded us that the law means nothing unless it serves the people equally. Sophia Lee, the journalist who first broke the story, released a documentary titled Truth Under the Badge. It became a national phenomenon, winning a Pulitzer Prize for its raw portrayal of systemic failure and redemption. In one scene, she asked Jamal what justice meant to him. He paused, then said, "Justice is when truth no longer needs witnesses." Meanwhile, the Edwards Initiative continued to grow. Within a year, it helped more than 200 families overturn false convictions. Universities invited Jamal to speak, civic groups honored him, and even Congress cited his case during hearings on law enforcement reform. Yet through it all, he remained humble, still driving the same car, still teaching part-time at Morehouse. Titles fade. He told his students, but integrity, that's forever, 6 months after the verdict. Jamal received a letter from the White House. It was brief, but profound. "You have restored faith in justice when it was nearly lost. Your courage has reignited a nation's conscience." Attached was an invitation to the Presidential Citizens Medal ceremony. Lisa read it aloud, tears in her eyes. "You earned this," she whispered. "No," he said gently. "We earned it." As winter settled over Atlanta, The city that once symbolized injustice had become a beacon of reform. The body cam program reduced complaints by 35%, and public trust rose to its highest level in 20 years. The very street where Jamal was handcuffed now bore a mural of his image, not as a hero, but as a reminder. One man's stand can rebuild a nation's soul. And on that quiet evening, as the lights of Peachtree flickered below his window, Jamal sat with Lisa by his side, watching the city breathe again. "Do you think it's finally over?" she asked softly. He smiled faintly. "No," he said. "Justice doesn't end. It evolves." 1 year later. The White House glowed beneath the calm morning sun as the grand doors of the East Room opened for a ceremony that would mark a new chapter in the nation's story. Rows of chairs filled with senators, civil rights leaders, and law enforcement officials faced the presidential podium at the center aisle. Jamal Edwards walked slowly, his navy suit perfectly pressed, his expression humble but resolute. Beside him, Lisa held his hand tightly, her eyes glistening with pride. When the president stepped forward, the room fell silent. "Today," he began, "we honor an American who turned his own injustice into a catalyst for truth. Mr. Jamal Edwards, your courage forced this country to confront itself, and because of you, millions now believe reform is possible. The medal, a golden circle of justice and integrity, hung briefly in the air before resting against Jamal's chest. Cameras flashed, the crowd rose to its feet, and for a long moment, the applause seemed to carry the weight of a nation's gratitude. As the ceremony ended, Jamal looked across the room and saw faces from his journey. Chief Gonzalez, Victor Chen, Tyrone Hayes, and even Sophia Lee, holding her camera with quiet reverence. They each nodded, a silent acknowledgement of battles fought and lessons learned. When reporters swarmed him outside, microphones thrust forward, he simply said, "This medal isn't mine. It belongs to everyone who ever stood for truth when it wasn't safe to do so." His words played across every screen that night, echoing through living rooms and news broadcasts like a quiet anthem of hope. Months later, Atlanta transformed. The Edwards Justice Initiative had expanded to 20 cities nationwide, funding legal defense programs and supporting families victimized by false arrests. The streets that once carried bitterness now carried murals of unity, paintings of officers and civilians shaking hands beneath the words, "Truth lives here." Public trust in the police rose steadily, and complaint rates fell by nearly 40%. Even the harshest critics admitted the change was real. Jamal's name had become a symbol, not of victimhood, but of accountability. And yet, even as progress unfolded, Jamal never saw himself as a hero. On quiet mornings, he would drive down Peachtree Street, the same road where his life had changed forever. The storefronts looked the same. The traffic lights blinked the same rhythm, but he saw them differently now, not as signs of chaos, but of survival. One morning, he stopped his car at the very intersection where Officer Mitchell had pulled him over a year before. The memory flickered, the flashing lights, the shouted commands, the handcuffs, but now there was peace in his chest. He stepped out, stood by the curb, and looked up at the sky. "We made it. Dad," he whispered. "Your fight wasn't wasted." Meanwhile, behind gray prison walls, Karen Mitchell was nearing her release date. Her days had been spent in quiet reflection, teaching literacy classes to other inmates and speaking to visiting law students about ethics and prejudice. She no longer flinched when people said her name. It no longer carried shame, but recognition. One afternoon, she received a letter. It was from Jamal. In his neat, deliberate handwriting, it read, "Redemption isn't about forgetting what you did. It's about choosing what you do next. You faced the truth when others hid. That matters." She folded the letter gently, tears filling her eyes. Maybe, she murmured. We both found justice after all. When she was released 6 months later, she accepted a volunteer position with a reform program funded by the Edwards Initiative. Standing before a group of young recruits, she said, "If fear can make you blind, truth can make you see again. Don't let my story become yours." Back in Atlanta, Chief Gonzalez oversaw the final phase of Project Rebuild, a comprehensive reform policy that required psychological evaluation and bias training for every new officer. During a press conference, she stood beside Jamal and spoke candidly. "We failed once," she said, "but because of him, we learned how to stand again. The Edwards Protocol will become a national standard." The crowd erupted in applause in the months that followed. The world took notice. The New York Times called Atlanta the city that rebuilt trust. Universities studied the case in ethics courses, and Sophia Lee's documentary, Truth Under the Badge, was adapted into a feature film that won awards for its powerful realism. At its premiere, Sophia hugged Jamal tightly. "You didn't just tell a story," she said. "You rewrote one." He smiled faintly. "No," he replied. "The truth rewrote itself. I just let it speak." One evening, Jamal and Lisa visited Morehouse College for a guest lecture. The auditorium was packed with students, many of them aspiring lawyers and activists. As he took the stage, the room went silent. "Justice," he began, "isn't born in courtrooms or headlines. It's born in the choices we make when no one's watching, a badge, a title, or a law. They mean nothing without conscience. Remember that when your turn comes." When the crowd stood in ovation, he saw in their faces the same fire that had kept him alive through fear, humiliation, and doubt. It was then he realized his greatest victory wasn't winning a case. It was planting courage in others. That night, after the lecture, Jamal and Lisa walked through Centennial Park hand in hand. The city lights shimmered across the reflecting pool, where the new memorial for victims of false arrests glowed softly under engraved names. "Look," Lisa said, pointing to the base. His father's name was there, newly added by community petition, Officer Harold Edwards, served with honor, remembered with truth. Jamal stood silently for a moment, his throat tightening. He'd be proud. Lisa whispered. He nodded. "Maybe. But he'd tell me there's still work to do." The next morning, Jamal received a call from the president's office. They wanted him to serve as national advisor for justice reform, overseeing federal initiatives inspired by Atlanta's transformation. He hesitated at first, unsure if he wanted to re-enter the machinery of government. Lisa smiled. "You always said change has to start from within," she reminded him. He exhaled slowly. "Then let's start again." By year's end, 20 cities had implemented the Edwards Protocol, and the Justice Initiative had assisted more than 300 victims nationwide. But for Jamal, the true reward came quietly. Letters from families, thank you notes from officers who'd reformed, students who said they chose law because of his story. In one letter, a young recruit wrote, "Because of you, I wear this badge with my eyes open." Jamal kept that letter framed beside his father's photo on the anniversary of his arrest. He returned once more to Peachtree Street, this time without fear. The sun was warm, the traffic steady, and life moved on. He parked by the curb, leaned against his car, and looked at the street that had once defined his pain. "This is where it all began," he said softly, "and where it ended." Then, after a long pause, he smiled faintly. "No, not ended. Transformed." As the city lights flickered to life and the evening breeze brushed across his face, Jamal Edwards, once a man falsely accused, now a symbol of rebirth, closed his eyes, whispering words his father used to say before every shift. Do good. Be fair. Leave the world better than you found it. And with that, he drove into the Atlanta night, the reflection of justice shining in his rearview mirror, not as a destination, but as a road that would never end. Thank you for watching. If this story touched you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who believes in truth and justice.